Welcome to another episode of Arbitration Life. I am Janette Bryn.
And I'm Hana.
Arbitration is said to be the preferred choice of dispute resolution mechanism for resolving sports-related disputes. However, arbitration, and more specifically sports arbitration, has been criticized for its lack of diversity. You may recall in 2018, rapper Sean Carter, more popularly known as Jay-Z, was granted a motion to halt ongoing commercial arbitration proceedings in a $204 million lawsuit on the grounds that the lack of African-American arbitrators would hinder his right to equal opportunity under the law.
That's right, Janette. And now on the topic of sports arbitration, while the Court of Arbitration for Sports, or CAS, has made significant changes in its organization and structure since its 30 years of existence, there has been criticism with regards to diversity. And this was highlighted by a two-part extensive report on arbitrator diversity at the Court of Arbitration for Sports that was released last year by Morgan Sports Law. This topic was also discussed during the BVA-IAC Paris Arbitration Week event on sports arbitration at the end of March earlier this year, where our guest was actually a speaker.
A partner at Morgan Sports Law, our guest today focuses on international arbitration and alternative dispute resolution in the context of sports disputes, and more specifically, football-related disputes, which include contractual, disciplinary, regulatory, and governance disputes.
Prior to joining Morgan Sports Law in 2019, he spent 10 years at the Court of Arbitration for Sports, initially as counsel, then as managing counsel and head of arbitration, and finally as deputy secretary general. Prior to that, William worked for a leading international law firm in Paris for 3 years in commercial arbitration. During his time at CAS, he oversaw approximately 940 CAS arbitrations, with more than 700 of those related to football. Please welcome William Sternheimer. Hi, William. Welcome to Arbitration Life. How are you?
I'm good, and you, Hana?
Very well.
Yes, pleasure to meet you, William.
Pleasure. Likewise, Janet. First time we meet, but I've seen you a couple of times on the other episodes of Arbitration Life. So nice to meet you in person, although virtually.
Now it's your turn. So how are things in Lausanne at the moment?
Things are good. Things are good. Summer is coming to an end, unfortunately, but otherwise it's same old Switzerland, I would say.
Very well.
All right, so let's get started, William. The first thing I would really love to know from you is, how did you get started in arbitration? And did you choose arbitration, or did arbitration choose you?
So I definitely chose arbitration. When I was studying at university, I was looking for a matter which would allow me to work internationally. So you know, choosing between lots of different matters at university is always difficult when you don't have a clear view of what you're going to be doing later. But then when I knew that I wanted to practice in litigation or in disputes, I was looking for something which would really allow me to deal with clients internationally. And although I studied French arbitration law, I decided to go for arbitration and alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. So this is how I came up to choose a master's program at university in arbitration, and then specialized in arbitration.
So why sports in particular? Are you a sports addict?
Yeah, so I worked for 3 years at GID, a big French law firm, in commercial arbitration, in international commercial arbitration. And after working for companies, and although I liked it, I wanted to basically find a matter which would be a good compromise between my arbitration background, but also my passion for sport. So I've been starting to look for a new position, and this is how I ended up in Switzerland, working at the Court of Arbitration for Sport for 10 years, and then staying in the sports arbitration world.
Nice.
Yeah. So nice. And now, William, what would you say you enjoyed the most about working in sports arbitration? What would you say is fascinating about it?
Well, if if one is a sports fan like I am, and following football or I don't know how you call it in the BVI, if it's soccer, I think only the US calls it soccer, but football or tennis or basketball, rugby, I'm a massive sports fan. So being able to work on a daily basis and basically dealing with clients who you read about in the papers is something that's a big boy's dream, I would say. Like I'm always joking with my wife, I'm being paid to read the sports papers now. I used to read them for pleasure, now I'm being paid for it. So no, it's really, again, being able to, to work in arbitration, which is really a field of law, which I found amazingly interesting, with my passion for sport, is someone that makes me wake up every morning and go to the office every day with a big smile.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So what qualities would you say make an arbitrator an effective one? Are there any specific qualities for an arbitrator when it comes to sports arbitration?
So I've worked along, when I used to work at CAS, I've followed close to 1,000 arbitration proceedings. And I've sat with many different arbitrators. Some of them were sports arbitrators and only dealt with sports arbitration. Others were coming from the commercial world and were commercial arbitrators. And I think that basically there's no real difference. I would say one of the best qualities of a sports arbitrator is his knowledge of the sports field and the sports imperatives. When you have a competition starting within 24 hours and you need to think about whether you would admit an additional team or whether you can let an athlete participating or not, it has very different implications than when you are dealing with commercial arbitration or construction projects or the like. But I guess the qualities an arbitrator has to have is knowledge of the field, obviously, and being able to understand the core reasons for a dispute. And for me, a good arbitrator is an arbitrator who's also able to allow the parties to mediate and potentially end up with a settlement agreement, although initially they didn't think it would be possible. So it's a bit of a mix of everything, but yeah, obviously, knowledge in their field is obviously crucial, but like with a lawyer, but also understanding the core reasons for the dispute, because this is how you can understand how to unmake it and allow the parties afterwards to be happy with the outcome, no matter whether you lose or win.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that totally makes sense. So now, you just mentioned, William, you spent 10 years at the Court of Arbitration for Sports, and you've overseen hundreds, you said 1,000 arbitration, which is extremely impressive. How would you say arbitration has changed from the time you started at the Court of Arbitration for Sports to now? And what further changes would you like to see?
In terms of changes, when I joined CAS in 2009, CAS was handling 300, 400 cases a year. Now CAS is basically handling 1,000 cases a year. So the number of cases has really increased. And I would say sports arbitration went from a very amateur status with niche lawyers, but who were not experts in sports law, but rather just experts in arbitration or in litigation. They didn't have a specific knowledge of sports or sports law, to be precise. And the more the years advanced, and the more I've seen really specialized firms being involved. And obviously now I work within a firm which is only dealing with sports disputes, and there are a few others on the market. And we know exactly what the arbitrators are expecting. We have some commercial arbitration backgrounds, we have litigation backgrounds, so we can basically apply the best of the two worlds and make life of the arbitrators very complex. So I would say sports arbitration really went from an amateur status to a professional status, if we are to speak also in terms of football. You've got amateur players and professional players, and it's exactly this. So now cases have become more and more complex, and arbitrators, when you see the awards which are rendered by the CAS, you see that they are longer. They deal with many more issues than what they used to in the past. And what further changes I'd like to see? Well, again, because the evolution in terms of the quality of work of the counsel appearing before CAS has evolved and has improved substantially, I think that most of some arbitrators, I would say, are still, thinking that sports is a secondary matter, and they have other activities in their life, and they tend to deal with the sports issues at the end of the day. And I think that now sports arbitration is a matter on its own, and should be given the same way as any other dispute, even though the amounts in disputes are maybe lower.
Yeah, the lawyer, but I mean, what's in dispute, like the life of an athlete, for example, it's very serious.
It is, but it's when you talk about commercial arbitration or investment arbitration, and you've got billions at stake, although you've got one athlete's career in your hands, when you're an arbitrator dealing with an anti-doping procedure at CAS, still it's not financial and maybe off the records, but when you have those legal 500 or chambers coming to you, they'll put in the first tiers the firms which are dealing basically with high value disputes. And when they are not capable of putting a value on a specific case, they take it as secondary. So when you say, I've handled 10 anti-doping cases, the amount in dispute is 0.
Yeah.
So compared to another arbitration firm who's going to be dealing with, I don't know, an arbitration concerning the construction of a stadium, which is sports arbitration, but then you've got billions at stake, and they will be seen as handling billions.
Of course.
So
you're right.
It's only about this, basically. But yes, I agree with you. The career of an athlete is probably, in my opinion, as important, if not more important, than money. But obviously, when you talk to a company, it's money which is more important than the career of someone. But question of point of view.
No, you're right. And in the directories, like, we know that amount in disputes are very important, and that's a question that's asked to law firms. But I think Janette's next question is going to be very interesting, because we know you deal with transfer of football players too, and we know those are quite big amounts of money.
All right. So, William, you have a very impressive profile. You represented famous people in the industry, one of which is Brazilian football player Neymar Jr. Could you share with us more of, I should say, your most memorable case and why?
Well, it's I won't be talking about CAS because I haven't directly been involved in handling the dispute or dealing with one's case directly, but I'll be talking about the cases I followed since I joined MSL as a lawyer. And obviously the Neymar matter was really fun in the sense that, I'm a football fan, I'm a Paris Saint-Germain fan. So representing a player from your team and one of the most famous players in the world is something that's really, it's really impressive when you have him for the first time in front of you and you have to put him questions. Again, it's like a big boy's dream. But I would say that the most memorable case I had to deal with is probably a recent case involving a tennis player from Ukraine, Diana Yastremska. She was one of her anti-doping tests returned positive, and she was basically facing a 4-year ban while she was only 19, and she was I think she was 20 in the world, ranked 20, so a pretty high profile athlete with a very big potential. Her agent was always saying that she potentially could be number 1 in the world. And we had to handle this case, which was very fact specific. I won't get into the details and the scientific details, but it it was a terrible story for her because she got basically contaminated through her boyfriend, and you know, having to defend, and we come back to what we were discussing earlier, one's career is really something that takes you, you know, that makes you very, very stressed, and which is something that's really important. If she had been banned for 4 years, she might have had to stop tennis, because it's even though you can say that after 4 years she would have been 24 and she could have played again, you know, we all know that stopping for 4 years is something it would have been almost impossible for her to recover from such a sanction. So yeah, that's probably the most memorable case I had to follow, not because of its interest, but because of the stakes that were involved.
Yeah, very interesting indeed.
And you won, congratulations. So
We did win.
that's amazing. So now, William, what setbacks or difficulties have you experienced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
It's very difficult to answer this. I'm not sure I can talk about difficulties. Obviously, you've got moments which are stressful. You've got moments which are, you know, which are harder than others. You know, as a lawyer, you need to deal with your clients on a daily basis. You need to also get paid. You need it's really sometimes times are difficult, but I would not be able to say whether I had any setbacks or difficulties. The only thing that I could say is that, you know, the job as a lawyer, CAS was very different, because when you work within an institution, and you Janette and you Hana, you know about it even more now on a daily basis compared to me, who's been away for a couple of years. I would say these are dream jobs, and I haven't had any difficulties at CAS. But as a lawyer, I would say the main difficulty is understanding your client, keeping your client happy, while at the same time not being able to do exactly what he would expect you to do, because it's not legally feasible. So you need to balance on a daily basis the interest of your clients with your reputation on what you can do or cannot do. So this I would say is probably the most difficult part of the work.
Yeah,
I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah,
Sorry?
absolutely. And a lot of stress.
And some stress, but I would say that I think there's no job where you don't have any stress. You always have some stress.
Fair enough.
And stress can be good. It's only for you to be able to transform, you know, to make your bad stress a positive stress in order for you to improve, rather than drowning under it.
Very well.
Yeah. William, what advice would you give to aspiring practitioners looking to work in arbitration in general, and perhaps even specializing in sports arbitration?
Well, I would say one of the, well, probably the only advice I can give is working in arbitration means that you're going to be working in lots of different areas of law. So you're not going to be only working in investment law. You're not going to be only working in construction law. You're not going to be, even in sports arbitration, you're going to be handling anti-doping matters, disciplinary matters, employment-related disputes, governance issues. So you'll be basically handling a lot of different aspects of law. And therefore, the advice I would give is, if you're interested in arbitration, you need to be open-minded. You need to be interested in many, many things. Yeah, that's probably it. And sports arbitration, I would say, in addition to this, loving sport is probably crucial. We had lots of interns coming to us, and when you ask them whether they are interested in sports, and they're like, no, I hate sports. I don't practice sports myself, and I'm not interested in watching sports on TV or reading about sports. But then obviously when you get a sports case, you know, you lose the little something that makes your work interesting on a daily basis. So yeah, interest in what you do, and probably being very organized. I think litigation or arbitration is all about being organized.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess too, especially with sports arbitration, if you don't know much about sports, it's harder to relate to the athlete that you're working with to understand what he or she is going through if you know nothing about the sport.
Yeah, and you know, when you're talking legally, only legally speaking, it's interesting because you'll be telling clients that sometimes it's better to lose a month, although the athlete is already suspended on a provisional basis, in order to get a stronger case for him or for her. And at the same time, sports, like you said, has imperatives. So if you have got a World Cup coming soon, or another competition, you need to balance those imperatives of timing with also the athlete's career. And sometimes, coming back to the example of Diana, she had to miss, I think she missed the Australian Open, she missed Roland Garros, and she missed Wimbledon.
Oh, wow.
So she was really unhappy with it for obvious reasons. Wimbledon was a bit of a different story because we got the decision a bit late. But yeah, it's very hard for an athlete to understand that sometimes, you know, you need to miss a couple of major events for them in order to have a strong case, rather than just running into it and potentially facing a very severe ban. So yeah, that's organization and you know, being able to put yourself in the athlete's shoes basically is very important.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
No worries.
And now, William, can I ask you if you could share with us a pearl of wisdom that you have cherished throughout your life?
I'm not sure it's a pearl of wisdom, but I think to be a good lawyer, and again, we come back to what I discussed a little bit earlier, you need to be organized. And you don't have to be an organization freak like I am. You know, every people who's been working with me have always seen my desk without a single paper on it, because I hate keeping papers on my desk. But I think that, you know, what I've cherished on my life is really being organized, not doing the next day what you can do immediately, and basically this allows you, in my opinion, allows you to anticipate issues and to be able to handle issues when they are coming. If you wait because you've got a deadline until within 2 days, and if you wait the last minute to deal with something, then obviously if something else comes on top, it's going to add some stress and bad stress. If you manage to handle things every time they come, basically it allows you to face every other issue one at a time, and I think that's what I applied for me, and I must say, hopefully I've managed to handle those pretty efficiently. It's not always the case, but this is something I've tried to follow all my life for my personal life, but also for my professional life.
That's great advice. Be organized, be responsive. And we worked together on an event, and I've seen that you respond very quickly. It's quite impressive.
This won't be recorded, but my nickname at CAS was Speedy Gonzalez.
This is staying.
And yeah, all the arbitrators were calling me Speedy Gonzalez because, you know, every time they were asking something, it was done within 5 minutes. If not, while they were talking, I was not typing at the same time. It's you know, it makes everyone's life easier, and your own life easier. So and you guys at the BVI, you know, when you handle cases and you handle lots of cases on a daily basis, the more you have on your desk, the more stressed you'll be, and you might not see something that you would otherwise see if you deal with everything a step after the other.
No, it's very true. I think organization is so important in our profession, and it's not something just as a new junior lawyer. It's throughout your career. So absolutely.
Yeah, well, I've always been impressed by some lawyers who had like thousands of papers on their desk. You couldn't even see them anymore when you were going inside the office. I remember all my life, a partner in Paris, when you were coming to his office and he was sitting facing him, you could not see him because you had papers and files basically above his head. But he knew everything. He knew every deadline. He knew where to find every paper. I guess everyone's got different ways of organizing themselves, but the core principle is still being organized.
Absolutely.
So speaking of organizing and making life easier, William, as a sports arbitrator, I would be keen to know, what is that theme song that gets you ready for your day in an arbitration hearing?
My team song.
Theme song.
Well, there are two. I'm not going to say I'm putting them every time I'm going in a hearing to advocate the case, but the Champions League song is something that I find, it's always something that's really makes me feel positive.
Yes.
And obviously, because I'm a Paris Saint-Germain fan and because I used to go in the stadium, the song they put when the players enter the field, which is a very old song from Phil Collins. And this is one that I wouldn't be able to recover the title anymore now, but it's one that I really enjoy listening once in a while.
Fair enough. I love it. Yes.
Great choice.
So thank you so much, William, for giving us an opportunity to learn more about what you do and just sharing some really valuable knowledge for arbitrators, especially aspiring arbitrators out there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for having me on the show. I find that what you guys are doing is really great and important to promote arbitration in the BVI, but in the Caribbean more generally. I hope the episode will be of interest for everyone. Looking forward to meeting you in person again. Well, you again, Hana, and you, Janet, for the first time. Hopefully in the BVI.
Yes, absolutely. Next year, that'll be great.
Well, you mentioned earlier that summer is coming to an end, but I'll let you to know summer never ends in BVI, so you're welcome anytime.
Yeah, we've discussed this with Hana already a couple of times. I'm very jealous. Obviously, working within an institution like CAS is very different. You've got very short summers and very long winters. In the BVI, it must be very, very, very different. I might apply one day.
Sounds great.
Right.
Or even for work, you should check out our hearing facilities.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we've been discussing this with Hana. Obviously, CAS is the place to go for sports arbitration, and most of the cases that CAS is handling is what they call appeals cases, which are basically appeals against decisions which are rendered by sports federation in the first instance. And there you have a clear path, which are decided by the federations themselves. But for commercial arbitration matters or contractual matters, nothing would preclude parties from inserting a BVI clause. So you guys could have to deal with a couple of sports arbitrations in the future if people are willing to submit the cases to you, which I hope will be the case.
Absolutely. We look forward to.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, William. It was great to see you.
You're very welcome and have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, William, for joining us for another episode of Arbitration Life.
For more Arbitration Life, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Plus, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Arbitration Life.